Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from the fires of Mount Doom. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a good episode ahead of us today. We've got some quick hitters, of course, the Formula One Hungarian Grand Prix coming up this weekend. A little bit of League of Legends as we're getting near Worlds time for Esports, and then of course we've got a little bit of Magic: The Gathering. So, Justin, good to see you. How are you doing, man?
Yeah, good to see you too. It's been a pretty good week. Missing you, definitely. Was looking forward to getting back to the show. Like you said, we got a packed episode here for the people this week. Why don't you tell me about your week, though? Let's hear about your Rose, Thorn, and Seed.
Sounds good. So this week for my Rose, Colleen's friend from Denver, who we had gone out to visit, was in town for a work function for her job, and so we got to meet up with her, go out to dinner with her, and one of Colleen's old roommates who they're all friends and everything, and so it was just nice to see her hang out, kind of catch up a little bit. I know, like, Colleen and their other friend Kyle obviously talk to her a lot and everything, but I just get like the tidbits here and there. So that was nice to catch up a little bit. Nice. My thorn this week is just that I forget if I may have talked about it before, but I get these like salivary stones in my like mouth where it's basically like a blockage in the saliva gland. And of like calcium and other little, like, it's kind of like a pimple in my mouth, but it's not like painful. But these things get like stuck there. It like feels uncomfortable. Like I can kind of feel like the difference in pressure on like my tongue and wherever, like way back in the, like towards your esophagus and all.
Gotcha.
And they're just like really annoying, difficult to get rid of. It's like, and I just get them a lot. And I know there are like some things that could help. Like if I drank more water, that would definitely be beneficial, or stayed like better hydrated throughout the day instead of just drinking like all my water at night. But just in general, it's an annoyance. It's been bothering me the past like couple weeks. And
Gotcha.
I finally like got rid of some of them, so it, like, grossness aside, just very annoying. So that's my thorn for this week. And then my seed is that we're going to be dog sitting for our friends starting this weekend. So we're going to have Wally, Senna's bestie, over for a few days, hanging out with us and all. It'll be definitely nice having both dogs. They can kind of play, tire each other out, have a good time and everything. And we're happy to spend time with him. He's a good dog. So that's my Rose, Thorn, and Seed for this week.
That's very cool. So now is Wally the dog that Senna was hanging out with today on the little puppy date?
Yes, it was.
Very cool.
So,
very cool. Oh, wow. So they're going to have all sorts of time together.
Oh, yeah. The thing I'm like trying to figure out, I think the most right now, is just how we're going to manage like bedtime, because he doesn't sleep in a crate anymore or anything. He's like a 2-year-old dog. And so him like staying out and then us putting her in the crate, I don't entirely know how that's going to go.
Senna's going to be like, wait, what the hell? Why does this guy get to...
Yeah, it'll be, I think that's the thing I'm not worried, but like wondering about the most. But it should be a fun time. We'll figure it out.
Very cool.
Lots of people have multiple dogs, so.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious if multiple dogs, though, with multiple like bed strategies, or if it's all just like all chaos or all in crates.
Yeah, that's fair too. It's probably pretty consistent.
Who knows though? But yeah, so my rose here for the week. Interesting thing. So I was sent. Sarah has a more busy week than usual, so I offered to take care of some of the food shopping. And interestingly enough, I have to say I kind of enjoyed it. Even having to do like a multiple stop, I had to pick up some things here, pick up a thing there. It was like not a frustrating experience, not that bad of an experience. Maybe it was just like the time of day that I chose. I imagine there are times you could go where it's just like mobbed with people and
Oh
maybe
yeah,
not that fun.
that's ours varies. Well, it doesn't typically because we've gone like once around noon on like a Saturday or Sunday, and it was just like terrible. And so we are like psychopaths and just will get up at like 8. Well, we'll already be up from Senna,
Sure.
and so we'll just like at 8:30 on a Saturday or Sunday, just get up, go knock out our grocery shopping while like no one's in the stores,
There you
or
go.
very few people in the like very busy stores, and I'm like, we just cruise through. I enjoy grocery shopping. It's
Yeah.
it's definitely like can be satisfying if it goes smoothly.
Yeah, for sure. And just like picking out all the things for the, week's future meals was, just something of a good time. So I enjoyed that. And then my thorn here this week, I was thinking of you. Me and Sarah were playing some hunt. Me and Buddha were playing some hunt, and I have just like not been that great, or like the people have been getting better. I don't really know, but I've had some more I should say I've had more frustrating moments in the game than usual, and in a conversation afterwards, not in the moment but in a conversation afterwards, I was talking with Sarah and I was like, it just reminds me of all the times when Aaron would just be like, dude, they're not even good, and that would be like followed up by like whatever happened, because like that is definitely where my head was at, where like I just wanted to say like they're not even fucking good. It's me that's sucking. Like I'm missing my
Yeah.
shots. Like they're not even good and they're beating me. And that's where a couple of the rounds were, and it was just funny, like just talking about that and just remembering some of these league games that we had,
Oh.
where like, oh, the tilt would get so real for both of us,
Oh
truly.
yeah.
But just that phrase was just hilarious, and it's just like burned in my mind.
Well, I'm still like that, but not so much at the opponent, but just a like the frustration sometimes, and everything, cuz I think my issue is that I have like my when I'm playing well at a video game and I'm like just like in it, like locked in, feeling good, um I can play so well, like way
Mm-hmm.
above where I should actually normally be. Like
Mm-hmm.
the ceiling is like up there, but it's
Sure.
really tough for me to like get locked in like that. So then when I have these games where I just like am making mistakes and all, I'm like, I
Mm-hmm.
know that I am better than this because I've
Mm-hmm.
done it, and I just can't right now. That's
Sure.
I think where that frustration comes from. I've thought about that a lot because I definitely have called a lot of kids bad when it was just me
Mm-hmm.
playing bad.
Or like the realization of like, oh, my floor is like pretty low too,
Or even just
which is
like
funny.
slightly below like average,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just like, man, but the high's so high.
And it feels so good. So yeah, just some tough hunt rounds overall, making me just question reality overall. And then my seed here for the week, something I talked about probably last week or the week before. Finally have a new therapy session in the books.
Nice.
Thankful that it didn't like go too long, in between. Part of me was starting to think they forgot about me, but we we found an arrangement that'll work out, and so I'll be getting back on the books pretty shortly. So happy about that, and so that serves my rose thorn seed.
Nice. That's awesome. I'm glad to. It sounds like you haven't like had too many struggles, but like you still are interested in just
Yeah,
like
I
maintaining that.
I
And
note how it's helpful. Yeah, for sure.
yeah, so that's awesome. The other thing I was gonna say about your thorn though was when you said that you were having some rough games and thought of me. I was like, oh, is he gonna say he was hoping that I would be playing out there so I can make him look good? Because I'm definitely worse than you at Hunt by far. I
Well,
thought that's
I
where that was
mean,
going at first.
no, 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 no. Just that me and you have struggled together. We have been in the thick of battle together, wins and losses,
Oh
and
yeah.
just thinking of that complaint specifically, just because that's like definitely where I was at. No, never to condemn one skill, never, not at all.
Oh no, I didn't think it would be in a real mean way, just in a joking way. But talking about some of those games, the frustration. You said League of Legends, and so a quick hitter for as we get into the quick hitters for this week's episode for the LCK is that they announced a financial regulation that will put a salary cap on teams' salaries for their top 5 players. So it won't be like including your amateur players and whatnot.
Hmm.
And if the salary cap is exceeded, then the team will have to pay a luxury tax. So, like, you're allowed to exceed it, but you pay a luxury tax that just gets split amongst your rivals and the other teams. So it might be a like $20,000 that gets split to the other 9 teams or whatever.
Oh well.
Which I thought was actually a really interesting way of doing that because it definitely de-incentivizes like going over the salary cap and everything. Like with the Formula One salary cap, Red Bull going over, they just got fined a bunch of money. I don't remember hearing about that money going like being split amongst the teams or like that seemed like it just went straight to the FIA.
Whoa.
So
Yeah.
and like I maybe that's how it works or maybe they do like reintegrate the money in the system somehow. But I was like that's it makes sense to like do it that way to some extent because if you do like go and breach the cap you're hurting yourself and getting a penalty but you're also like providing more financial assistance to the people who like in Formula 1 per se are trying to catch up to you. So if you're
Hmm.
like, yeah, I'll pay a luxury tax to have the 2 best drivers on the grid on my team and to just go crazy,
Hmm.
but then I get hit with a like third or like a $10 million fine that just gets split to the other people. Like it's a pretty big deal, especially for like
Yeah.
the small teams.
Yeah, definitely. And honestly, that idea is sounding very novel to me. I don't know if I've ever heard of that before,
I
but
haven't either.
as far as even like balancing competition and giving an advantage back to teams that would be disadvantaged by like quote unquote rule breakers, there's something like very interesting about that, especially in games where like players can be worth so much money and the contracts can kind of like make or break a team. You factor in like, oh yeah, well like these smaller organizations like they can't purchase these like big name players if they don't have the capital to like fund their contracts. So what if, salary cap, and then if it's broken, then it gets fed back to those other teams. That's like a fascinating idea. Right or wrong, that's fascinating.
Yeah, and I'd really be curious. I didn't look into because I know there are other leagues that have like luxury taxes and things like that. I think the
Okay.
NBA does. I believe the NFL and maybe baseball do. I don't remember all of them, but I know some definitely have a luxury tax. But I'm not sure how like what that goes to or how it kind of works. But
Sure.
definitely just an interesting note.
It
But
goes to the pizza parties.
there you go. Love the pizza. Pizza parties.
it just gets thrown into a pot for an end of the year pizza party.
That'd be a huge pizza party. But to move on to some motorsports, we've got some IndyCar. So the Toronto Grand Prix was this past weekend. We had Christian Lundgaard come out on top. He drove a really, really good race. Got the tire strategy right and all. But a solid, very young IndyCar driver getting a win, breaking Alex Palou's win streak. He had 4 in a row, I believe, up until that point, and he was up there duking it out, going for it, but just fell just short there of getting that 5th win in a row.
Okay.
But it was a solid race. Grosjean DNF'd, which is another bummer. He had a really he had a solid qualifying. Like he was starting, I think, P8 or P10.
Okay.
But just missed out on the Fast 6 qualifying right at the end. He just, his last lap, I think his last qualifying lap, he was looking good and just seemed to fall off as it got to the later legs. But a good fun IndyCar weekend. But then upcoming this weekend, another kind of interesting one is the double Grand Prix weekend. So IndyCar is going to have a Saturday full qualifying and race, and then a Sunday qualifying and race. And this is for the High V Grand Prix at the Iowa Speedway, I believe.
Gotcha.
And so they have just the High V Homefront 250 race 1 and 2. So just back-to-back 250 lap races.
That's wild.
Yeah, I thought it was a really an interesting concept to have a weekend. Like a sprint race is so much shorter than a full race, and a 250 lap IndyCar race, like that's not a short race really. Like
Is it on the same track, or is there
it's I'm pretty sure it's an oval track too. It's just like two.
Wait, what?
I think.
So it's effectively 500 laps over 2 days. So it's effectively like an endurance thing that they're doing.
Yeah, to some extent.
Yo, that's actually wild. But here, let me ask you this. Was this about the time that you came into IndyCar last year? Because I remember you wanting to talk about it, and I was like, was there 2 races? And you were like, I remember that being a factor of conversation. Was this?
I think
did they do this last year?
I think they did, and so this might have been right around where I watched it, because I think there was like a gap in the F1 calendar or something, and I was like, I just had a chill Sunday where I didn't have anything to do, flipped on the TV and was like, IndyCar race, and I was like, wait, like what is this? So yeah, I think it might have been right around that time.
Interesting stuff. Well, either way, whenever that's kind of crazy. So man, there's gonna be all sorts of racing action this weekend. Now, it's like the same drivers. It's not like they're doing a different lineup, different like reserve drivers or anything.
Yeah, it's sorry, my headphones got pulled out for a second there. I had to plug them back in. I shifted too far.
Gotcha.
But you're saying the Grand Prix this weekend with reserve drivers and all.
So it's gonna be the same lineup
for both IndyCar races. Yep.
Whoa.
So yeah,
That's
just
wild.
double weekend to go after it and get points and everything. So I'm interested to see, especially like with Grosjean. I'm always looking for him to do well, but Marcus Ericsson too. Just the oval track racing. Ericsson obviously has won the Indy 500, so he's pretty decently comfortable there. But Grosjean hasn't seemed to quite find his comfortability with it. So I'm just interested to see, especially after a double weekend, like how he looks over the course of those races. So lots of circles.
Nah, it makes me think of Jeff Dunham's famous joke with the I forget what the character's name is, but he's like, they're making a left turn.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Classic bit, classic comedian.
Yeah. But
Lots of left turns this weekend, though.
Lots of left turns. So I'm looking out to see how that goes this weekend. Should be a good one. But looking over towards F1, there were a couple of drivers or former drivers who came out and made some statements. So first one, out of left field, out of nowhere, Nick Latifi comes out of the woodwork to give his life update on what he's doing and everything. So,
bro, can I just tell you, on the message boards, when they refer to Latifi as Goatifi, goat, the goat Latifi, bro, it kills me to the core. It is so funny. They call him
love it
Goat
so
Tifi.
much. It's my favorite. It's my favorite nickname.
Yeah,
it's the best.
Definitely agree with you there. Continue.
But he came out and just basically said that he was going into a master's program for business school and was like, I had a lot of interest in business over the years. It's like a good time to, he's like, I'm not saying that I'll never be a part of the like racing world again, but he's like, this is this next step of my life and just like sent it out to the world. So good for him. It was nice to see that he's doing pretty well. He was like, took some time away from social media and everything to just figure out what he wanted to do, and so props to him. You gotta love Goatifi.
Yeah, I mean, he is, to some modern F1 fans, like, he's gonna live kind of in infamy in our minds. Like, he's gonna go off to business school. He's gonna, start his own just like road tire selling company. He's basically just gonna be like the next, like, fuck, I can't even think
Pirelli.
of like a local. Yeah.
Oh,
no, like a local Pirelli.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Just like an Avis or someone like that just like sells like new and used tires to people.
Gotcha.
Like, he's gonna go into business. He's gonna open up a very successful tire company, but there will be people like me that are kept awake at night. Kept asleep at night would actually be very funny. Kept awake at night, just thinking of like the memories of how he stole that championship from Lewis. Honestly, I just stew that Lewis doesn't have 8 right now.
Oh yeah. There's been a fair bit of
hate it.
Hate. HEIGHT.
What?
I was doing an H with the number 8 because I saw it's funny. I've seen the Lewis Hamilton fans get very upset a couple times recently, and it's like the Twitter ones who are not the like true like actual fans of the sport and of Lewis. Right. They're just like the fanboying, like Abu Dhabi 2021 RIP, like just like spam
the
posters.
memers. Yeah.
And
the goddamn memers.
So Mercedes like Twitter or Instagram posted a picture of like it was I guess merch, like Lewis Hamilton Mercedes merch, and it was just like the hat and the shirt and the pants, like whatever, like hanging off a chair with like no body. It was just like in the, and it just and I guess the line is named 7. And the fans in the replies going 8 and like photoshopping the picture and just being like, you should know better, admin, it's 8, not 7, like all this stuff. I was like, this is just so funny that they get like they're yelling at the Mercedes team admin on like social media, and I'm just like, you were just bullying this man for doing his job. Like I was cracking up.
When in reality, it was all Gotifi's fault.
All Gotifi's fault. But
Damn.
talking about another former driver, a much more fresh one. So Nicky DeVries. So Christian Horner came out and in an interview had said that it was becoming a pretty difficult situation with Nick just because there was this high expectation of him to perform well. Because he was like, even though he didn't have F1 experience, he is an experienced driver. He's driven these other series. He's I forget. I think he was the world champion in
Formula E world champion, Formula 2 world champion.
Yeah, and so
or Formula 2 champ.
But yeah, just saying that basically it didn't feel like it was just like working and everything for him with the team in F1. And Nick also made a post, and he said that he's going to take some time away from social media, the usual, but he thanked Red Bull and AlphaTauri for the opportunity to race in F1. He said, of course, it hurts to be out of F1, but life is a journey, and he's looking on to figure out what's next and everything. So it was a really, really solid post. I think he handled it very well based on that. And I think it was very classy to see him kind of make a nice statement, not really go or seeming too upset. I think he's probably understands that his performance just wasn't there. I don't think he's oblivious to that fact. So
yeah, I can't imagine you would be. And just because he's not in a Formula 1 seat, I imagine, like, this, depending on what his goals are, he could easily just slot back into a Formula E seat, a World Endurance Championship seat. And maybe I'm, like, overrating the, like, Formula 1 driver thing, but, I mean, I'm sure if he still wants to race, he could definitely still race.
Oh, yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. It seems like he really loves racing, so hopefully he'll end up getting an opportunity doing something that he'll be able to perform a bit better in, and hopefully have a better career going to whatever's next. So definitely just kind of I still feel for him, but I think it was a good move on Red Bull's part, but the Red Bull organization. But it was interesting. I saw a tweet then this week about how Nick DeVries was the sixth driver that's been like dropped mid-season by Helmut Marko. And so going back to 06, there was one Christian Klein was, so these are guys I've never really heard of. This was like early Red Bull, but Christian Klein was replaced by Robert Dornbus. Sebastian Vettel then came in and replaced Scott Speed at Toro Rosso in 07.
And with a last name like that, how could you be kicked?
Yeah. And so just going on through, like, Max going up to Red Bull, and Danny Kvyat being dropped down to Toro Rosso, Gasly and Albon and all. And so just a number of different times. And so it's just not a shocking thing, I guess, with Red Bull. I just didn't realize that it had happened this many times.
Yeah, like, I mean, it seems to work for them in whatever way that makes sense. Like, it definitely seems like those decisions have paid off in droves, right?
Yeah. Like, you definitely have seen like improvement with the guy coming in, and like
with
pretty
every
much,
single one.
But like it's kind of tough No, I guess it's fair for the driver coming in. I'd say the driver going out, like having worse performances wouldn't shock me, just because they're probably like pretty in their head after something like that. But yeah, the guy coming in outperforming is definitely an interesting part of it that I think you're right has happened pretty much every time. So.
Well, and for because this is more of the comment on like Helmet Marco's eye for it, where like he just knows when the time is up, and he's just like, well, we bring him up now because, and then you're also like because they've done it a couple times and they have seen it work. Now that's like a muscle you're training, right? So now his eye for it is probably better than when he made it with Klein originally,
Yeah. Well, it's still interesting too because like especially with like the Albon and Gasly like swap and everything. I feel like both of those drivers like I mean they both bounced back into F1 after being dropped from Red Bull, like both of those guys. So it's not like they were like you could say like maybe Albon coming up for Gasly and then dropping out of F1 entirely, that Gasly could have been the better driver because he stayed in F1, but then of course Alex bounced back. So it's like I think that's the only one that I'm like, I don't know, Gasly could have maybe just like gotten it together and like had a good trajectory before they dropped him. But
Fair. I can
same,
see that.
Same with Albon, because Albon had like obviously is performing like phenomenally in this Williams car that's pretty tough to drive. So so yeah, it's just it's definitely an interesting thing that Red Bull has done pretty frequently, and I guess like you said, Helmut Marko's one, not afraid to do it, and two, I'm sure has like more confidence in those decisions based on it working in a lot of instances. So
Well, and especially in Nick DeVries' scenario, like the whole like, well, why didn't he get the full time allotted? And to my understanding, based on the conversations that Christian Horner had with F1 Nation, it sounded like at the Silverstone test, it was like, well, if this goes well, like, would you be interested? And then on that, because I believe a lot of these decisions were made like on the day of that test. So I think I'm not sure why I say this, but I guess maybe on like the premeditated angle of it, it doesn't seem like it was. It was just a conversation. Daniel did quite well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and I mean they had kind of talked to Daniel like when he first joined back as a reserve about like, I mean he had talked about not wanting to take a seat on a worse team or to like he wanted to be racing for a top team and everything. And so looking at it from that perspective too, like the fact that he was willing to take the AlphaTauri seat and everything as an opportunity when they asked is like, I'm sure that was part of that whole, like, whether or not a swap happens, because maybe it would have gone till the midseason break, and if he didn't perform, maybe Liam Lawson would have come in instead of Daniel Ricciardo if he wasn't interested in that position. So yeah, I feel like it did kind of come down to a more like spur of the moment decision.
Yeah, as opposed to, maybe these other ones were, I mean, who knows, and maybe it doesn't really matter. Either way, I think fans are pretty excited for the driver that's been slotted in for Nick DeVries. We talked about it last week, and I think there's a lot of hype around Daniel Ricciardo coming back into the seat. Oh, this is what I wanted to say. I totally lost my train of thought once I hit the Google button. Was that he's like going to the worst team on the grid though right now, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're in last.
Yep.
Hell yeah! All they can go is up, baby.
Yep, that's what we're looking for. Progress, baby, and points. I want Daniel Ricciardo to, well, I guess if
He's just gonna podium.
I was gonna say if he performs well, I think he would go above Nick DeVries anyway. But it would be interesting in a season like where there are more than 20 drivers that drive, not including like one race substitute kind of thing. For someone to finish like 21st place, that will be kind of weird. But
well, Daniel has more races.
Yeah.
If he finishes them all out, he'll have more races. He'll end up more races in the car than Nick.
So I think he might automatically hop up, but I don't know how.
He's got to earn points.
I don't know. Well, but there's got to be a tiebreaker for people with the same exact number of points. I don't know what that is though. Might be an average,
probably.
I was thinking something like that, or like average finishing position.
Laps led would be silly because not every you don't.
But it could be like one of the tiebreakers if it goes down to like multiple.
Right. Whoa. So, if they're tied here, and here, and then you go to who tied their shoes quickest.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what they check after weighing. They have a shoe tying test just for the final tiebreaker.
Just final tiebreaker off the drivers onto the pit wall. Just a 1v1 pit stop showdown.
That would be insane. Actually, not like up to the drivers anymore. It's up to the pit crew.
Yep.
That's sick. But then what if they tie? What if their times are exact?
Then you go to the shoe tying.
Okay. All right. I'm down for that.
Yeah, but I don't even quite entirely remember how we got here. But anyway, Daniel Ricciardo's going to podium this weekend. That's what Justin said. Course. But to move along to the next bullet on the list, we've got just some conversations, some rumors about potential driver interest, especially looking at 2025 when a lot of these, or 2024, 2025 when a lot of these contracts are coming up. But Lando Norris is thought to potentially have some verbal negotiations having gone on with Ferrari, potentially for Carlos Sainz's seat. Carlos has been talking a bit with the Audi team to kind of put the feelers out there for potential option if he does end up leaving Ferrari. And then Mercedes has some interest in young Charles Leclerc to potentially come in. I think that is under the assumption of Lewis retiring in the next 2 years. So yeah, it could be some big shakeups. Could be a very, very silly 2024-2025 season with contracts and negotiations and all. So should be fun, but we've got plenty of time before that.
Well, hopefully, I mean, if Sergio Perez just keeps doing mistakes on Saturdays, I mean, it's gonna be Daniel Ricciardo 2025 in the Red Bull jersey.
Could be Daniel Ricciardo 2023.
Yo, that would be insane. Helmut Marko just double tapping drivers. You get out of here. You get out of here. And Daniel Ricciardo just leapfrogging up the grid.
It's just like reverse Oprah. It's like, you don't get a seat. You don't get a seat.
There you go. Holy heck. Literally from sim driver to Red Bull driver number 2.
That just shows that video games do translate to real life.
Oh man, don't give these kids a dream, Aaron.
But yeah, some interesting driver chitter chatter. There's also a rumor around the grid that there are 3 teams that may have breached the budget cap this year already. So there's some speculation of that. Yeah. So looking forward, it'll could be spicy as we get towards the off season, get some of these numbers. But looking at just kind
The
of
look on my face when Mercedes been spending bucks. I'm gonna say, listen, y'all were out here just pointing the finger at Red Bull. Man, can you imagine
well, and
the hypocriticalness?
oh yeah, and I think so. There's kind of a funny little conversation that I've got coming up in a second, sort of tangential to that, but um, another note that I saw. I think this was this week as well. Some of these were throwbacks since I talked only about Daniel Ricciardo last week, but Haas now with Ferrari changing their side pod design and Mercedes, of course, adding the side pods. Haas is the only one with those big giant Ferrari style side pods now on the grid after everyone's kind of switched to the Red Bull style. Which brings me to kind of the funny topic that I've heard this week, and I want to hear what you think about it. But
Go for it.
Red Bull apparently is bringing potentially their last big upgrade package, but they're bringing an upgrade to Hungary this week, and it's expecting to be 0.2 faster for a car that's already just way out ahead of the grid. So just demoralizing everyone around them even more by making another jump. But the conversation was that there are going to be visible changes to the car. And so what I saw on Twitter, well, really everywhere, was just the question of how funny would it be if Red Bull went and got rid of their side pods and went with a side podless design like the one Mercedes had tried to go with, goes 0.2 faster, and just fucks with everyone by being you couldn't do this no side pod thing, but we're gonna do it and be faster than we already were. When I saw that, I'm like, that'd be kind of funny.
Yeah, and that is with the assumption that Red Bull has all of the answers and can even do the strategy that you couldn't pull off. They can even do that better. Yeah, that would be a fascinating thing. But I imagine it's just going to be maybe
I would think
I doubt it's going to be not as drastic as that.
No. I imagine it'll probably be some tweaks of side pod shapes, to maybe provide slightly better aero, or maybe maybe they figured out they could go smaller and reduce weight or so. I don't know. But probably that, or pretty of the floor, if it's going to be visible changes, is what I kind of imagine. But when people said that, I was like, that would be pretty funny. Just for Red Bull to be oh, we're going to do what you tried to do and actually make it work and just crush everyone. I'm looking for some sort of entertainment out of these weeks when Max and Red Bull are just steamrolling ahead. So at all these little funny things, I'm like, oh, that would be funny. Including, well, I don't know if it would be funny, but the potential for, if trends continue, for Mr. Sergio Perez to be out-qualified by Daniel Ricciardo. The potential based on Sergio's qualifying, and then, obviously, we have no idea what Daniel's going to be able to do in that AlphaTauri until we get to practice sessions and all, but that could be a very odd situation if that ends up happening, if Checo hasn't pulled himself together.
Yeah, that would be kind of odd, but don't you think that would be likely due to Sergio having some kind of abysmal week, as opposed to like that being where the AlphaTauri and Daniel
Oh,
Ricciardo is. You know what I
no.
mean?
But yes, but also just if Daniel is like first weekend able to outperform Checo in a much worse car, like yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
would definitely be because something happened with Checo. Not like it would have to be a on merit kind of thing, not a Checo
That
like his car
right.
blows up in Q1.
Exactly. This is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, but if he just genuinely like Checo has another bad qualifying, doesn't get out of Q1, and Daniel
Mm-hmm.
somehow manages to, that would be a kind of odd situation, and I'm sure would pique the rumor mill a bit
Oh
more
yeah.
about everything, which I just love seeing the memes. Like
Oh yeah.
anytime these rumors start coming up, and that's what gets my interest with them is I'm just like
Mm-hmm. Is the
reading all
jokes
the
other people are making,
oh yeah, people are funny. I
of course.
gotta give it to them. So it would definitely be and like an interesting conversation to kind of wonder what they are gonna plan to do
Mm-hmm.
moving forward. So
Yeah.
yeah, an interesting thought. But moving into this week at the Hungaroring, we have the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Worst track name.
Yeah, it's not great. I'm trying.
Not great.
Yeah, I don't think there are any that are worse than it. It's actually just like not a it's not a good one.
No.
I had
No,
never
it's
thought
like
about that. That's why'd you
way
do
at the
that to
top.
me?
It's tough to say. It doesn't evoke any kind of mystique. It's just like a rough word. Hungaroring in Hungary. Okay.
It's a bit yeah, aggressive sounding maybe a little bit
Hmm.
too.
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
Albert Park. What a beautiful circuit name. It doesn't even sound like a circuit.
Spa.
That's great too.
Oh yeah. Silverstone, that evokes like those memories and feelings and all. Yeah, I get what you mean. That is, I had never thought about it like that. But looking at last year's race, Max won that one. So if he's going to continue his streak of race wins this season and Hungaroring rings, we'll have to look for him at the top of the podium potentially this weekend. But this was the race last year that Max passed Leclerc, did a 360, and then repassed Leclerc because
Hmm.
he had his spin. But 70 laps, they're going with the softest tires. I would imagine we're looking at probably a two-stop strategy, potentially a three-stop, just depending because a lot of low-speed corners should for a number of the teams probably caused some issues with tire wear. We were talking about the McLarens at Silverstone having really good speeds with the high speed corners. The low speed corners is where they seem to struggle a bit more.
Hmm.
Where Ferrari and I believe Aston Martin both have like done a bit better with those kinds of tracks so far this year. So that'll be a potential kind of move back to their previous form that they had earlier in the season for both Aston and Ferrari. That's kind of what I'm the two teams that I'm keeping my eye on the most this weekend.
Gotcha. Right. But I think, right. So you're saying that this is going to be a good opportunity for McLaren to get some points because they're still operating with those
So
high speed corners?
there's just not as many high speed corners at the Hungaroring. So
Hmm.
McLaren, and I think they like were referencing this briefly in some of the interviews the after the British Grand Prix, but they were saying that some of it was track dependent that they performed so well at Silverstone because they
Hmm.
do have like really good tire wear and everything through the high speed corners, but where although they've definitely improved, it still was somewhat track specific that they performed as well as they did. So the low speed corners, McLaren might struggle a little bit more with this weekend. So we may see them slide down and kind of be battling a bit more closely with the Aston, with the Ferrari and all, and have a bit of a more bunched up or kind of mixed up midfield.
Gotcha. And speaking about the Ferraris, this was last year where they had 2-3 in qualifying, and neither Ferrari ended up on the podium, which is wild.
Yeah, it was a Max and a double Mercedes podium to finish out, and that was after Max and Checo started 10th and 11th on the grid. Yep. So tough qualifying for them both. But Max just was able to make his way through the field. Another thing I'm keeping an eye on, I think they changed it, but the DRS detection they previously had a double DRS detection for the long one and then the short one that was right after it, where there was a time in last year's race where Lando got passed, I think, by Max and there was another, I think Max and Charles maybe, in like that one little stretch, because he didn't get the DRS. He was the leader of the three and didn't get the DRS for either zone. So he got passed by Charles first and then Max like on the second DRS zone.
Gotcha.
So I forget.
Tough.
I think they may have changed how that detection works, that maybe both zones have a detection to create a little bit more like of a race back and forth. But if they kept it the same, that'll definitely be a strong point with the Red Bull and the Aston, I think, with the DRS boosts that they kind of get. They both have really good aero with that compared to a lot of the other teams.
Super quick in a straight line.
Yeah, so definitely something to kind of keep an eye on. But yeah, I think Aston and Ferrari should both look a little bit more like they had early on. Shouldn't see Ferrari battling for points at the bottom of the 10, but we'll have to kind of wait and see. And I don't know what the weather has for us this weekend. You never know.
Yeah, because last time out it was quite cold, if I remember, leading to, that's you start having questions about like, tire warm up and are they in the right window and things like this, if if the temperatures are pretty cold. So if we have another race like that, we could see some interest, that be an interesting element on the weekend, just as much as, extreme heats on a weekend are just as, can be just as jeopardizing, you could say.
Yeah, so it's I'm excited for it. It should be a good race. 70 laps around the circuit. So it should be a fun weekend. It is a pretty short lap, so it'll go by just as quick. But yeah, I'm looking forward to hopefully some mix-up tire strategies. Last year there was a 2-stop was kind of the norm, I believe. So hopefully we'll get to see that. I feel like that just shakes things up a good bit with the races. So
yeah, it gives more opportunity for drivers to increase their position, just because there are more opportunities for like kind of things to go wrong, or like shakeups, or kind of teams able to kind of make their own luck, basically.
Yeah. So definitely will be a fun weekend, and looking forward to having two pups and Colleen there on the couch with me to watch the race. So
it's going to be a loaded show there on Sunday. Make sure you tune in next week for the breakdown of the Hungarian Grand Prix. We're definitely going to be tuned in and excited about it.
Yeah, you sound super excited about it. You're just thinking about the Hungaroring name, and you're just.
I'm stuck on that. I'm gonna have to say that for the next week.
You're gonna have to. I'm gonna just have to have you lead the recap, so you have to say it as much as possible next week.
Just over and over. It'll be immersion therapy. Just get it.
Or it'll
get it
just
all over me.
Be like it'll stop sounding like a word because you've said it too many times. So
there you go.
But moving from the upcoming race weekend, moving over to League of Legends, we had we're going into the last week of the LCS. We have 3 matches left per team, so I wanted to kind of just give a breakdown of where the LCS is. There are a couple teams that still have the potential to make it into playoffs. The top 6 go to playoffs in the LCS. So we have Cloud9 and Golden Guardians at the top at the moment. Evil Genius is 3rd, followed by Team Liquid, NRG, and TSM. NRG and TSM are both within the possibility of falling out of the top 6 slots to 100 Thieves and Dignitas. If both 100 Thieves and Dignitas win out, I think, and I would have to look who they're playing and everything, but 100 Thieves and Dignitas both still have the opportunity to get in if they win out and NRG and TSM lose out, or potentially we could see some tiebreakers there. So
Gotcha. And when you say win out and lose out, you mean lose all 3 or win all 3?
Right, exactly.
Understood.
So yeah, there's definitely the potential for some things to shift around still over there in the LCS going into playoffs, but Golden Guardians and Cloud9 having been the teams that went to MSI, being right now at the top of the table, I think is pretty impressive that they were able to maintain that form. I think we've seen that in obviously some of the other regions, Gen G over in the LCK, JDG and Billy Gaming in the LPL. So seeing both those teams kind of maintain that throughout the season, I think is good, looking towards Worlds for hopefully like consistent and kind of solid performances from the LCS teams that end up making it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm curious how much that MSI tournament this year like helped them, how much they kind of are taking from that. Maybe not from a strategic standpoint, but just thinking like momentum, morale wise. I can imagine that's just huge for these rosters, especially for Cloud9 with M&S, because this is his rookie year, correct?
Yeah.
So yeah, for a player like that, I mean. Then again, you're surrounded by a bunch of, like, other than Berserker, surrounded by some pretty good veterans. So I imagine there's a solid base of confidence there. I don't want to take away from that, but I imagine there's a good morale boost that comes that you're able to kind of lead into the next split with. So yeah, seeing Cloud9 11-4, and Golden Guardians 11-5, like they are cleaning up currently.
Yeah, definitely some strong performances for both of them. And I think just looking forward to the playoffs, obviously, last split, Golden Guardians really made a run. So you never really know once you hit those best of games and matches how that's going to shake out. But to get the bye, at least for the top 2 teams, Cloud9 and Golden Guardians both have to make sure that they do continue this winning streak and all at the top of the table, because Evil Geniuses, Team Liquid, I think are both still in the or they both still have the ability to potentially grab one of those top 2 slots. So
yeah, only down a game in Evil Geniuses and down to Team Liquid. Like, that's really not that far behind. So, yeah, we could be set up for some pretty exciting playoffs.
Yeah, so it should be fun as we make it through the end of this last week of the LCS summer split going into playoffs. But looking over towards the LPL and the match that we looked at this week, I wanted to kind of look at some teams that were ones that we hadn't talked about quite as much, along with being in that playoff zone. So we had Ninjas in Pajamas and LNG Esports that we looked at. LNG up at the moment in third place in the LPL, with Ninjas in Pajamas being down in 10th, so right at the end of that playoff streak. I kind of wanted to look at this as well, just in terms of kind of trying to get an idea of the gap from being towards like the top of the table. I didn't want to talk about JDG or Billy Gaming again, and wanted to focus on some other teams, but
Sure.
but still looking at kind of a towards the top of the table versus just at the bottom of playoffs, and seeing how that matchup looks. But going into it, there was a lot of focus kind of towards some of the top lane and those jungle picks, the Poppy, the Vi, Vi being still pretty close to permaban, but the Poppy, Renekton, Vi, Jax getting banned out in the first round. It definitely... Or wait, no, I'm looking at... I feel like I'm looking at the wrong... Oh, I was looking at Game 2 on the Picks and Man. So that's my mistake. Game 2, the focus on the top lane and jungle. But in Game 1, that, I guess, because Zika did get the Jax in Game 1, and LNG focused pretty hard on the top side of the map there. They started off pretty hot. But Ninjas in Pajamas, it was like, I feel like looking at it as kind of the matchup as a whole and how these teams compare, the big gap I saw was just in like the proactiveness around the map, which I felt like was one of LNG's bigger strengths in this series. And so kind of looking to get that top lane ahead, they know the Jax can carry if it gets ahead and can scale much more quickly. So the focus from that, with especially Tarzan on Sejuani, was great in Game 1. But there still are those like things that LNG can improve on, and of course NIP as well. Because with LNG having this kind of more proactive macro play and everything, moving around the map well and all, they still did have a lot of, or I'd say too many times that they were getting picked off, especially Tarzan on Sejuani throughout the later game for NIP to try and climb their way back in. But watching them be able to kind of let their carries carry, and especially with how strong Scout got on the Jace, Gala, of course, on the Xayah, and then Zika just kind of going crazy in the top lane. I felt like there was a pretty solid gap in terms of that proactiveness from both teams. NIP just kind of felt like they were on the back foot throughout the game.
Well, and is part of that, like, this is kind of what I saw even in Game 2, where Scout has the Nico. Like, the Nico seems to do a really solid amount of damage. That's a terrible word. A good amount of damage in lane and in the fights, but it takes so much setup. You have to like go into the middle of the team as this like squishy AP champion.
Yeah.
So in the match where like NIP is getting behind, like, and it was even, they were even looking for like fights that could have gone their way. I feel like Scout's Jace was just a little too quick to the jungle skirmishes. He was doing a lot in the early game, I think, for LNG. And then as that kind of gap spreads for NIP, I think Angel's position just gets very tough to play, because you need so much setup to get that damage down, and if you're behind, like, you're not trying to go face first into the enemy team like that.
Yeah.
So I think their team comp struggles in that bit. What I did think was interesting was they draft around this Tristana a little bit, where normally you're drafting double AD with Tristana going mid lane and
Mm,
you choosing like your Aphelios or something for the bottom side. I
right.
think it's interesting that they wanted the Nico for the mid lane and give Tristana to Photic. It's more of like a here you carry type of Tristana. But yeah, overall, I think the NIP comp was just going to struggle if LNG ever did get ahead. And
Mm,
unfortunately, Scout gets a double kill in the early game and then is just able to like balloon that gold lead. I mean, he goes 9-1. You were alluding to Zika on the Jacks, like he goes 7-0. Like that is very tough to deal with as this team that kind of wants to like go face first into them. So yeah, I think NIP's life got really hard in game one.
yeah, and in game two, LNG definitely didn't make it easier. They from their draft. So this is where I was saying the top laners were getting banned out a little bit,
Hmm.
especially from NIP's side. But we had Zika going down to the Cassante, which is still a strong pick, but then Invincible on the Gwen, which we really haven't seen as much over the last little bit. So getting pushed down the tier list a little bit for those top lane picks. But the big thing that I saw from this draft was just LNG's like go in potential,
Hmm.
because obviously with, like you were saying, with the Nico, your goal is to go in and like get your damage off, use your ultimate, lock people down, and hopefully not die in that process. And in game one, when Angel was playing it, like the key and kind of just what they couldn't quite do in those team fights and everything was the follow up was a little too weak or a little too late in a lot of those.
Yeah.
For the Nico, where she
Okay.
was only getting like one or two people in the ult and everything, or using that as a way to get picks to climb back in the game. In game two, Scout playing the Nico, he has a number of times where he's able to get into the middle of the enemy team, get off the ultimate, and then from there they have the Cassante who can dash in and use all his mobility, the Nocturne who can just come flying in using the ultimate, and then the Kaisa, of course, as well, who can just dive in, and they can just, as soon as Nico hits that ultimate, they can just go, 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 and just fly it NIP. And so NIP did a nice job of drafting to kind of defend against this with the Leona, a lot of CC and tankiness, Zaya being able to have the ultimate to get out, the Maokai, of course, with his ultimate. But it was very much a, if LNG kind of gets that lead early, they're able to push that so quickly by using that kind of wombo combo ultimate press R and win kind of strategy once they get that lead.
Hmm. Yeah, and in that press R kind of wombo type way, just to kind of close out my thoughts on game two, Tarzan on the Nocturne with the Kaisa pick, and obviously Kaisa is super popular right now. Very like you can play very aggressive. The Kaisa plus Nocturne, where you get the like you're able to what do they call it? What's the killer instinct where
Yeah.
Kaisa you're able to killer instinct like basically you get double nocturnal like onto
Mm,
the hero that you're trying to kill like that super potent. And for Photic, like you only have one ultimate to dodge one of the abilities, and you could see he just got focused down time and time again. Because yeah, that was a pretty deadly all combo. And I think here, interestingly enough, they actually get a lot of value out of Hong's Blitzcrank, he was able to hit a bunch of key hooks and didn't like really fall off into the mid or late game. There were a couple of solid hooks that he had, like even like past that like 15-minute mark where you kind of expect Blitzcrank to kind of fall off unless you're able to play around the vision really well and get a couple of good picks. I do think there was a lot of value in Hong's Blitzcrank here. So, overall, I think the team comp was like very exciting in game 2 from LNG.
Yeah, and I did feel like it was a little bit of a confident team comp from LNG after game
Sure.
1 to kind of say,
Sure.
hey, like, we know we can play this, and if we play it well, we definitely win. But if we get behind, like, it is one of those comps where I feel like you would struggle a lot if you get behind. I think from NIP to counter it, like I said, they had some CC to try and slow it down, but I think maybe a more proactive jungle pick other than the Maokai could have helped a bit more, just to potentially give the opportunity to put the Nocturne behind, because it was very slow early in the game up until they get to really the first Rift Herald fight. Like it was pretty much just farming, trading, and all. Up until that, where they get the first blood and the 2-0 fight for LNG. So it would have been, I think, probably the better strategy to go with a different jungle pick there. But they did pick that in their first round, so they kind of pigeonholed themselves at that point.
But yeah, the other kind of interesting thing just from like a pick ban perspective was the trading of champions where Angel plays an eco game 1, Scout plays it, and then they just like trade that matchup. I always find that interesting when players do that.
Yeah, and it also being like the blue side pick for both teams and everything. You're like, you see that a lot where it's being played from like the same side as the team switch and everything. So their pick bans are relatively similar, I guess, when you're looking at that.
Very much, I can do what you can do better.
Yeah, but moving over into the LCK, we had the DRX versus KT Rolster matchup they were looking at. So why don't you lead us off into game 1?
Sure, and I think like the reason I picked this matchup is because this should just be, I think, a 2-0 KT Rolster, and
DRX is a 3-9 squad. Sitting down there. I mean, just shy of playoffs, just because Guangdong Freaks is also doing pretty poorly throughout. But yeah, not a team that you expect to be lighting up the scoreboard.
Sure. So being that our match score is 2-1, I actually thought it was interesting that DRX is able to actually put up a fight here. In game 1, I like both giraffes. The one thing that kind of stuck out to me was the support Maokai for Barrel. I guess he had played it one time before, unsuccessful, and now support Maokai has 2 losses. Gosh darn Barrel. Big time unfortunate, but I don't think he's doing anything that a Leona isn't trying to do, that a Nautilus isn't trying to do, honestly. The ult is insanely high value, so I can understand the teams wanting to slot that champion somewhere. You could look at the Ari and say oh, has Ari kind of fallen out of favor? I think with the Vi, it's still a perfectly fine strategy to go for. I really don't fault DRX for looking for that duo at all, especially getting power in the top lane with the Renekton. I think their team comp's fine. Unfortunately, though, you have the And it just you get the feeling when Kroko and Rascal run top lane, try and dive Keen, and Keen almost kills both of them as they're like juggling turret aggro, running out the bottom, running out the top. Now you go. No, now you go. Now you go. Like that was really brutal, and I think it showed the power of Kesante and also like of his position in that game, where it really did take a lot, I think, for DRX to even try and eke out an advantage, try and eke out the advantage that they were able to get.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and I was gonna say with DRX and like their comp, like I agree. I think the Ahri is a fine pick. With the Vi, like just getting the Vi through the first phase of pick ban, it's like you have to take it. But I think the barrel on the Maokai for me as well was kind of like one of the unfortunate components of that comp, because you do have so much damage coming from the rest of the comp with the Xayah, Ahri, Vi, and Renekton. Like you're very squishy, very bruisery comp. And so from that support role, I feel like you would want someone who has a bit more pick potential, where I feel like Maokai is more just engage potential in general, which is not necessarily what you need, especially when he can't get as tanky as he could in the jungle or the top lane. I think you want something more like a Nautilus or a Blitzcrank, where you can get those picks a little more easily and pull someone in, instead of saying, oh, like the Maokai ultimate, you can't move, but we still have to run at you, and everything. And so you don't have the ability to get those small advantages that I think would have helped DRX a lot more. Kind of like I'd say in game 2 a little bit, where having the Kazakhs and everything in the jungle, you're going for those picks a bit more, and that's kind of your strategy with the bursts of damage you get with the Kazakhs, the Annie and the ultimate, and the Draven in the bot lane.
Yeah, so KT, they take game 1. The only other highlight for me was the team fight towards the end of the game, where you had Aiming and Paddock in like that tight little 1v1 versus each other. I think Fate ends up coming in, getting the kill on Aiming's Kai'Sa, but throughout that whole fight, those two were just like fighting each other, and I always find that very interesting, because most of the time one AD has way more gold than the other, right? So it's like not much of a fight. But in that, it was pretty even. The damage going back and forth, they end up basically like trade killing. So I thought that fight was pretty exciting. That little 1v1 was sweet. But yeah, going into game 2, the big thing for me, and the casters were like pointing this out hardcore, so like hot take for me, obviously, but I think a big factor in the game was honestly Keen's rumble, where some of his ultimates just did not help their situation much at all, especially with the focus that DRX was putting around the Baron pit. Like, that's what you want the champion for, and he was literally just like goalposting them, like doing not much damage, and it's like, bro, like that's where you really needed that guy, and
that's
he was
the
just
best
like
opportunity too, like in these grouped up team fights around an objective, to be able to just lay down the ultimate on 2, 3, 4 people.
Yeah, so I'm not sure they were using the rumble in the best way. And then in the fight where KT Rolster like has at least a position to take a fight against DRX, is where you had TF position above the Baron fight, and you had the rest of KT coming in from the mid lane side. the Rumble ult comes out a little too early, and just like you were saying with the Maokai, you still have to like run at them and follow up. Like you have to run behind that ult. The timing, it was just so wonky. DRX is able to turn off the Baron, kind of counter that fight. They push away the Twisted Fate. They're able to fight the main front of the KT team. And unfortunately, this is after a whole game of Paddock just getting cash in after cash in after cash in, like at these very steady intervals where like he was actually able to farm like a decent bit in between each of these kills that he's getting. So Draven is like huge by this point, unfortunately. So when he's hitting like a truck. Like
Oh yeah.
he is not really having a bad time in this game at all. So by the time I think KT was putting themselves in a position to win these fights. I mean, aiming was 10-2. Like they were not lacking on damage, I think. So yeah, I think DRX played around the Barons insanely well, and I think Keen was just like like he had never seen this champion before.
Well, and so that's like two things. So like talking going from the LNG series and talking about their like team fighting coordination on the engages and all, and then going to this, like that's definitely an area where you can see maybe a small weakness in a very good KT roster team. That some of that coordination, depending on the team comps and everything, they could have some struggles and give opportunities for teams like DRX to take a game off them. But the other part of that is just in general for KT Rolster's comp, like this was a very like just non-meta kind of comp. They could have easily gone with a number of different mid laners over the Twisted Fate. Twisted Fate isn't super. It's not that you can't play it in this meta, but it's definitely there are some other champions that would be above that in most people's minds for the mid lane. Same with the top lane for Rumble. Like I don't know if this is a we won that first game pretty easy, and so let's just like try out a comp in an actual match that maybe we've been trying to test out in scrims or something like that. But the comp from KT Rolster's side is just a bit just odd with those two picks because everything else is pretty standard to what we're seeing right now with the Viego and Kai'Sa and Nautilus. So I did feel like it was also maybe a little bit out of their kind of wheelhouse, maybe something that they're like testing out a bit more as we're getting closer to playoffs for LCK to see what else they can pull out in those best of series in the playoffs. But why don't you go ahead and take us into game 3 then?
Yeah, and that's not even like to like take away from DRX or anything. I definitely think they played the fights very well, especially the last one. They were able to lock BDD and aiming. They were kind of able to zone them out of the fight, and like they win game 2 like all merit. That wasn't really like a mess up from KT.
Oh no,
I agree.
Definitely.
I agree with your points about the team comp though. Game 3, we have some shakeups. We see KT have a better answer to the Renekton this time. They put Keen on Quinn, which he has a much better like success rate with. I think they're a little more confident in that matchup from Keen. But interestingly, DRX puts himself in a good position for like mid and late game team fights with Fate's Talia, choosing that as the matchup into the Azir, which as I understand, it's not super common, not super favorited, but I think what Fate was able to accomplish in game with the pick was actually super key, and I think gave DRX a fighting chance, honestly, at winning that game. There were a couple Weaver's Wall that Fate had that just totally locks KT out of an area. It even buys them a Baron, I think, the first round through. So yeah, I think DRX's comp was super strong. I think Krako's play around the top side gives DRX a massive advantage starting in the early game. So yeah, I think after game two, DRX solid draft follow up, solid in game, like early game moves. But ultimately, it literally just ends up coming down to DRX thinking they're strong enough for the Baron. KT Rolster gets a beautiful setup around the Baron pit, and then you just see BDD commit the most beautiful Emperor's Divide into the Baron pit, shove them all back. I mean, you could go back and rewind that final team fight probably honestly 10 times and look at 10 different champions. They all kind of have like sick moments in the fight. If you see like Paddock has like a sick Zaya flash ult where she like tries to flash backwards like towards her team. Like everybody kind of has their moment in that fight. And like the gold where the team where the builds were, I really think this fight could have went either way at that Baron. KT ends up, they clean up. They actually go 5 for 0 in the final fight, end up being able to push it through. But truthfully, I think this was a very competitive, very exciting series where if you look at where these teams were just in the standings, you wouldn't think so. You wouldn't think so at all. But I think some of the, like specifically the Baron setups for DRX, I think is really what put them in a position to make KT like make mistakes. Basically, it kind of puts them like under fire in a way, and I think that's where DRX like really shined in the series.
Yeah, and like kind of speaking to that with KT as well, like that's kind of how I was describing the LNG series with like LNG was controlling the flow of the play of the gameplay. They were controlling objectives, just had that they were kind of putting themselves in that solid position in all of those like team fights, objective fights, and everything. And so KT obviously has that, like I said, that's a small weakness I feel like they have, where DRX looks very comfortable just going in, setting up for those fights, trying to put pressure on those objectives and everything to I get in knowingly like in a position where you are to some extent outmatched in a number of different roles in the head-to-head player like skill level, but to control the flow of the game and set yourself up well, they put themselves in the best position that they could to try and win those fights and win the game in game 3. The only thing again that I still have questions on is with KT Rolster and the top lane pick. I mean, I know the Quinn is a counter to Renekton, but at the same time, the two most played top laners in the LCK this split are Renekton and Jax. So those are the two most common. I mean, Jax doesn't get banned out by either team. Cassante is the next one up. He does not get banned out either. Gragas the next one up, also not banned out. So going down the list to the Quinn that's been picked in 4 games, I can understand that Keen has like he's had his opportunities to play it. He's let's see here. Where's the Quinn in his? I was looking at his champion picks, but like his in the spring season at least, like his top played champions were Renekton and Jax, and then Cassante. So like they took the Renekton, take the Jax or Cassante. I'm not really sure why they went for the Quinn there. So that is my one question for KT Rolster, but otherwise, I mean, they were able to, like you said, get the clean ace in that fight. and be able to go on and take the Baron and win and everything. But I just don't quite get that from their side.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. Maybe not like the best top laner that they could pick in this scenario. But hey, if Keen wants to have a little fun up there, why not let him?
That's fair.
But in watching the LCK and some of these LPL games, obviously we're on the lead up towards Worlds. I've been kind of thinking a lot about like casters and the people that present these games to us. So the other day I went and I looked, thinking about so who has brought us the League of Legends final? Like, who gets chosen to do this? So I went through, I looked at all the years, all of the casting duos to see, who all has done it, who's done it the most times, and who all has done it together.
Okay.
And I think some of these things may surprise you. Now, as far as casting teams go, there has only ever been one repeat of a team. Can you guess who that might have been?
Ooh. Oh, no. That's probably Joe Miller, Don't Call Me Joe Miller, and D-Man.
Good guess. They would have done a bunch of IEM finals. You got half of it right. It is Damon. It is Damon. It would have been in years 2 and 3. It was Damon and Jat. Joshua Jat Leisman.
All
did
right.
Back-to-back years and shared what at the time is only one of 3 duo casts. They changed to tri-cast for pretty much every year after.
Okay.
Almost every year after. Quite recently, we had just Quickshot and Vedius on World's Final.
Was that 2020?
Would have been, yes.
Okay, so I think that was a COVID type situation, but
you are correct. So
man.
Damon and Jat are the only team that has ever gotten a repeat, and so this is early.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I know they've shifted it around enough over the years that it was unlikely for a 3-person cast to have been repeated. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of where I went with my guess. So it was little context clues on my end.
Close though. I guess it would have been 2019 and 2018. This is maybe revealing a little bit, but Kobe and Papa Smithy were on the same team back to back, but their third changed. They had Flowers the one year, Deficio the following year.
Gotcha. Okay.
Deficio notably has done Worlds twice, but now let's get into, so who do you think has cast Worlds the most?
And just as a reminder, these are just the finals, correct?
Specifically the finals. And the casting has never changed. It's been the same team through all 5 games.
I would, for some reason, I am thinking Papa Smithy.
Interesting. Papa Smithy has only cast the World's Final twice, and it was those 2 years with Kobe.
Gotcha. For some reason, he was at, before you had said that about the back-to-back, or the 2 years with him and Kobe, that's where I lean. So who is it who has done the most?
Right. So I'm going to slow roll here.
Hold on. Actually, no, Flowers, I think, has only done 1 finals. No, he's done 2. Flowers has done 2.
You're right.
Trying to think. Well, and since you said it might give it away, it might be Kobe. But Kobe is he would be such an easy guy to throw into any cast. He's so good and just a lovable figure. So I'm assuming that's who it is.
So in third, we have a tie. It's Rivington Bislin the third and Quickshot each with 3 Worlds Finals cast.
Okay.
Yep. So Riv has year 1, 4, and 5. Riv cast with Riv, Joe, and Jat, and then the following year with Jat and Deficio.
Okay.
So Riv was he was rife in those early years. Second is Joshua Jat Leisman at 4 World Finals.
Okay.
He cast.
Wow,
He
that's
did it
awesome.
with Damon twice, Riv, Joe, and then he cast with Deficio and Riv. And that was, oh, and then it looks like he cast with Quickshot and Kobe. I actually may have counted wrong for Jat. Oh, it looks like Jat has 5 actually. Okay, so he's still second, but he's got one more. So Jat has 5. And then number 1 is, you are correct, it is Kobe with
That's
6
wild.
World Finals cast.
That's crazy.
6. That is not what I thought. I thought it was going to be Jat in that top slot. If I had to
That
guess, it would have been Jat.
Yeah, that is wow, that's wild. I think I was thinking Papa Smithy at first because of I knew he'd casted some finals. I think with his experience in the LCK and then coming over to like help with NA and all, but I guess he came over more in coaching opportunities to NA, more so over the past few years. So yeah, that's wild. Good for Kobe. I mean, but he is such a just like in the best way possible. He's just so easy to just throw in there, and like you know that you're going to get great quality. You know that you're going to get a like positive, fun like atmosphere and everything. His excitement is always top notch. Like
Yep.
I am, yeah. No, that thinking about it, it makes sense, but it
Yep.
was not my first thought.
Yeah, and the only year that he missed out on, we talked about, was 2020, where Quickshot and Fedius did basically the COVID cast. That was the
Yeah.
only one he's missed out on, and he's done like,
Like the
all of
last,
them since.
yeah, 6 of the last 7.
Yeah, which is
Wow.
what that's the phrase I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, I gotcha. But oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was just super fun, and then also because like the information wasn't easy to just pull. I actually had to like click into each of the VODs. So like getting just a snippet of each of the years kind of like feel and vibe, and kind of like getting just like a little snapshot of the moment, like that was super fun. Remembering
cool.
like all like the themes that they did, all the kind of like, oh, I remember this color scheme, like, oh, that's right, that was this year's like theme song or whatever. So it was a nice little trip down memory lane, but it all had a point, because I would have told you that my favorite caster was Kobe, and it's clear that that's probably the sentiment like among League of Legends, because
Yeah.
you have to figure they put some combination of their strongest and most well liked casters on that final stage, right?
Yeah.
It's gonna be Kobe.
Yeah,
And
like
now
there's
looking at
nothing
it,
to dislike
go
about
ahead.
him, and well, and just like thinking to it's and obviously I've had I love Freak and I hate him at the same time in a lot of
Sure.
ways. Like
He's ridiculous.
he's ridiculous, but he is like entertaining and like a solid like caster in general. But they often, like thinking back, pair Kobe with him because I think Kobe is so smooth and fluid at being able to derail his tangents and reel him back in and all. And so having so like Kobe is just like a overall like now like thinking it through more, just clean, solid, like just person to have on any cat. It makes sense. It
Yeah,
completely does. That's awesome.
I definitely agree. Yeah, there's a couple of teams on here I think that are interesting. I would love to see, because Kadriel was 2022. That was his first time doing Worlds after many, like he was on the LEC panel for a while. So I think, and I'm pretty sure he's still currently an LEC caster. But I think always does a great job with the cast. So he's somebody that I would honestly like to see more of. But yeah, I just thought that was a fun little exercise to see who got it the most. And yeah, I think Riot has a pretty good team of casters. So that was just a little fun thing to do.
Yeah.
But before we get into the flavor of the week and close this out, I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of some Magic the Gathering things, some resolutions to a conversation we started a little while ago, talking about the Lord of the Rings set, and then kind of finishing off that conversation with like how some of these cards have kind of settled into the kind of like the meta game. So when we talked about it, we were talking about the one of one ring, the chase card that, people are going to gamble all their money away to try and find this thing. So I think it was like a week after the set released, a company, I believe from Michigan, put a post on Twitter saying that they had gotten back the one of one ring from where I forget where they got it graded from. I want to say like PCS, or it's not PCS, it's PSA. They got it graded from PSA. They had like the big Twitter post and everything. They communicated through a lawyer, I believe. So it was like the lawyer posting for them, basically saying like my clients have.
Dang.
So it was all, yeah.
Sounds like they did it all right.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely agree because the lead up to this was obviously a bunch of like fakes popping up on Facebook and Twitter, like in a bunch of the countries that they popped up in. You would be like, oh, okay. But just weird stories. So of course that's like the way you want to go, is like get it verified, have somebody from Wizards come and look at it and say like, yeah, that's the thing. So a very like litigious, very clean, very unfun route, and it leaves a bunch of people, to my ear, kind of like unsettled in a way, because they're like, oh, I thought it was gonna they thought the chase was going to maybe last a little longer, I think, and it was going to be something to stay tuned into for a little bit.
I mean, there are, like, when there's something like that, people are buying boxes, and as soon as they get them, they are ripping those packs open. Well, they're carefully opening those packs in case the card
they're being ripped, dude. They're getting torn.
Like, that is... I don't know. Like, I would fully expect it to be found within the first week.
Yeah.
For sure. Like, especially the following that Magic has. You mentioned to me, as we were, like, briefly talking before this, but the people who came out of the woodwork who are, like, not your typical Magic person, but were like, oh, I like Lord of the Rings, or also, oh, I like Lord of the Rings, and there's a card that's worth, what, $2 million?
That was like one of the official offerings for it before it was cracked, though. Yeah. While it was still just like in mythical hype land, right? Did somebody actually pay that $2 million for the card, though?
Someone, I would imagine, would.
Maybe.
I would say someone would. Whether or not someone has yet, who knows? But I'm sure people know, but I don't.
Well, and I'm not sure about it either. I just think like that number, I think, may have been like inflated by hype. I know one of the official statements was from football player, or I don't know if he played, whatever. Cassius Marsh made an official offering of $1 million to, whoever finds it. He would fly them out and whatever. So I think there have been like a couple formal offerings, but like we'll see if the card actually like changes hands ever and for what. But yeah, so that's the kind of headline angle. But where I was kind of looking, because I've had my eye towards some other formats that haven't been Commander, I'm interested into like, okay, so where are these cards being played? How has Lord of the Rings like impacted the metagame? Well, the One Ring, the card that is the functional magic card of the one of One Ring, because
Banned.
that treatment, no, it's not banned yet, not banned yet, but it is ubiquitous, my friend, because it's a 4 mana colorless artifact that just draws you cards. It's indestructible, and the turn it enters, it gives the controller protection from everything. So you buy like a full turn from your opponent. Like they can't do anything to you. So very strong ETB effect, and then it just draws you so many cards.
You lose 1 life.
Right. And like there's a point where you're drawing like 4 cards just for a tap. Like it's insane the amount of card advantage that this thing generates. If you're even like that's just if you're doing it once per turn. What if you're able to untap that thing once or twice? Like and like breaking the turn cycle basically? Like dude,
Yeah,
the
because you
amount
can,
of yeah.
especially early on, you could tap if you could tap it multiple times early on for
Yes.
like in the same turn with
Yes.
like 1 counter on it or no counter on it would be just stupid.
Right. The amount of card advantage you're generating from this thing is wild. So there's decks where it's like mono red the One Ring, where like normally a deck that would not think of a card like this just because of the rate, how powerful it is, we're just seeing it
It's
everywhere.
and it's like no specific mana. Like it should be
Exactly.
it should be red.
Well, it
I get
just
that they don't
shouldn't
want
be
it
colorless.
to be. Well, yeah.
It just shouldn't be
Well, I
as
mean, thematically, it should be red, is what I mean. Because it's like
okay.
born from the fires of Mordor. Like, it
Okay.
should be 4 red mana.
Interesting. That's a
Or
hot take,
two red
but I agree.
Or 2 red and 2 like, whatever. Like, at least
Whatever
something.
the cost would be,
But,
what you're
but
saying is
it's
restrict it to a color.
yeah, it should.
Fine.
But I do understand at the same time then red decks would be broken because you would just
Could
have this
be.
busted ass card that it would like get banned in a bunch of formats, but it would be like
I think it's still going to get banned.
oh, it probably will.
Yeah. I think in most formats that it's being played.
See,
Just because of... Go
even
ahead.
me looking at this, like, one, it's indestructible. Like, you can't get rid of it. Like, that is, like, well, I'm sure there's maybe some way to get rid of it with...
You can exile artifacts, and that'll do it.
So, like, there's a way, but it's not an easy way or potentially a way that most people are building their decks to for these formats. So, like, just like that, like, being the literal first word of this description, like... If I had looked at this before, I would have been like, "Oh, yeah, that's strong." Like, I mean,
It's pretty strong.
it is the One Ring, but
It is the One Ring, so it is definite covetous power, but at a cost. Obviously, you're paying life for all of that knowledge. But yeah, so we're just seeing the One Ring show up everywhere, so I think that's interesting. Then the other card that has made a bunch of waves, people are very excited about it. It's called Orcish Bowmasters. 1 and a black, flash, so you can cast it like on opponent's turn, basically. When it enters the battlefield, you amass 1, which makes a 1/1, and then you can deal damage to a target, but also you get that effect anytime an opponent draws a card after their first one for turn. So the idea is this army like stacks up a bunch, and you're able to like ping a bunch of damage.
So if you play this,
yeah.
And so say someone plays something that gets them to wheel their deck for like 4 or something. Like they get to like pull 4 cards or something. Can you, when they play that pull forward, can you say flash and then you get 4 damage?
Oh, yeah.
Or, well, I guess 4 damage because it would be after
Yep.
their first draw already.
And a
And
4/4.
and
Plus that 1/1 that you make, too.
yeah, and so you just get 1/1, or do you get 1 for each card that
You
they
get
draw?
1 trigger for each card that they draw.
Oh,
so that little token
wild.
that little token that enters the battlefield is now a 4/4.
Oh, that's different. I was thinking it would be like 4/1/1s.
No, it's 1 token that gets bigger itself. You don't go wide, you go tall.
Gotcha.
Right. So, like, here's an
That's still
actual play
scary.
pattern. It's very scary. Here's an actual play pattern that we see in Legacy. So, there's a card called Brainstorm. 1 blue mana. It says draw 3 cards, put 2 cards back on top of your library. In response to Brainstorm, flash in Orcus Bowmasters. That's 1 damage and 1 amass trigger just on the ETB. And then once that Brainstorm resolves, that's 3 cards being drawn, so that's 3 more Bowmaster triggers. So that's 3 damage to your life. That's a 4/4 now on the board that you have to deal with. Like, that is a brutal card. So
what about? Oh, I had it, and now I feel like I'm losing it. Hold on. It was something about what you were just saying. Oh, so what about a deck concept where you're making, like, so in Commander, like, obviously we've talked about one of the ways to win is to make your opponent go through all of their cards.
Yeah.
So by, like, having stuff that makes them draw cards and wheel their own decks till they're out. Like, that combined with those would be, like, ridiculous, too.
super strong, yeah. Because you're, like, taking cards away from them and then, like, dealing damage on top of it.
Is that
and it
something
doesn't have to
in
just
the
go
black,
phase.
like, mana that is, like, decently common as a playstyle? Because I know that a lot of it's monsters with
blue.
black. Okay, because I know black's a lot of, like, massing a lot of creatures and skeletons and whatever else. So,
but even, like, what's frustrating about what can be frustrating about cards like this is you don't even have to build your deck around them. That's the thing. Like, they are just so, the card quality just in and of itself is so high. It's doing so much already. Like, you don't have to pair it with anything for it to be like playable or exciting or like valuable in the metagame. So yeah, these are just a couple of cards that we're seeing, and, you know, just describing some of these very simple play patterns. Like, we can see, like, oh man, yeah, these are pretty powerful. So yeah, the One Ring and Orcish Bowmaster specifically, I think, has been pretty fun because I've never tracked how these cards affect constructed formats. I've only ever thought about things like, is it good or bad in Commander, and then I stopped caring about it. But because I'm exposing myself to, like, a bunch of other constructed competitive formats, I'm, like, learning about, like, okay, what happens when a card is dropped straight into the ecosystem? Like, what happens?
interesting. Okay.
Because a lot of times with Commander, it's like, it's a pretty binary conversation sometimes, but it's been interesting to track how a couple of cards have been just, like, affecting the metagames as a whole. I think has been just, like, fascinating, and the One Ring and the Bowmasters are the 2 cards that have really been doing it recently. But yeah, that's just my little Magic the Gathering little sideshow there for the episode.
Nice. I like it. But I guess that does bring us over to the flavor of the week. So
Let's do it.
Get us rolling. But Colleen's friend Caitlin, who came into town, with a dinner that we went out to with Colleen, Caitlin, and their friend Kyle, was at an oyster bar restaurant in Philly. So Colleen and I are always up for oysters. Caitlin, living in Denver, was like, I want fresh seafood because Denver, obviously, you don't have any oceans too close by. So but I had or some awesome oysters, and then I had a really great lobster roll. They had like full fish like branzino and Chilean sea bass and like these other things. And I'm like, you know what? Like a lobster roll sounds awesome, and it was. It was phenomenal. Nice. So really, really solid food this week. For my music on on TikTok, I follow this like Australian radio show that does. They play like EDM, or I see their TikToks of like EDM songs typically, and so they'll do a segment on their show called Sound Seeker where they'll play like a 1-second clip of a song, and the other host has to try. They'll do 3 songs, and they have to try to guess the like artist and song name from just that 1-second snippet. And they like do very well on it. They don't always get all 3, but they'll get like usually like minimum 1, usually 2, occasionally 3 kind of thing.
That's wild.
And so a lot of those songs are like, from the little clips I hear, they like slap. I'm like, obviously they're picking the like some of the best parts of the songs and everything. So I will go back and like put the song names, and when I did my little TikTok consolidation recently, a bunch of those ended up in my Spotify, and so I've been kind of listening through them, and like some of them I'm like, oh man, that best part of the song that they played the clip from, only part of the song worth listening to. But some actually like are really like fun and just like good energy all the way through, and so I found a few good songs that I've kind of tagged on my liked songs and everything to throw in a playlist. So I enjoy going through that, and like I know we had talked about it a while back, but like I feel like it's kind of hard sometimes to find new music at this stage in life. Like in college, it was so easy because you're mixing and mingling with all these other people that like their only things that concern them are school and their fun hobbies, like whether that's drinking or sports or like video games or TV shows or music. I felt like I got exposed to so much more music at that time in my life than I do now. And so TikTok's been a cool way to like expose myself to stuff that I wouldn't normally listen to and like test it out and be like, oh yeah, that one not for me, but like that's a solid song. Like I'll throw that into the mix and all. So that's been kind of fun to check out. And with the EDM songs, it's nice to like learn a little more outside of just like what I hear from Colleen playing or my normal like Spotify mixes and all.
For sure.
And then my visual medium is an anime I've been watching over the past like week or two. These animes get ridiculous names, but I was looking for like a fantasy like medieval type anime and came across How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom. Ridiculous name, but I think it has to be translated because it definitely is not like smooth flowing in English, but basically it's about a just random like college student who gets teleported into another like dimension because in this dimension there is some sort of magic ability, and so they did a summoning for a hero. This kingdom like summoned a hero to try like help them out, and he just gets like sucked through a wormhole into this world. Like there's nothing like that abnormal about him in like everyday life. It would be like you or I just like going through life and just all of a sudden being teleported there.
Wild.
But as a person from a like modern day like our timeline society, going into this like medieval type world that doesn't have a ton of technology and all, or like from his knowledge of like history and countries and the world in our world, it just is able to like be like, oh no, like as a country, like you brought me in to help you out. I don't know how I'm getting back to my world, so like might as well like just figure this out. And he's like maneuvering all these things like military and the economy and all these things, and they don't get like super nitty gritty about those things, but to rebuild this like struggling country that was like our last hope is to be like, let's call on a hero with this weird summoning that we don't think will work, and this guy shows up and just is like, oh yeah, like I've seen this before, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. It just starts like
wild,
just putting pieces into place, and so it's kind of like it's a fun like show. There's a lot of like positive towards this guy where he's like pulled from his normal everyday life and is just like, well, I'm here, so I'm going to make the best of it and help out all these people as much as I can. And just like, it's a kind of cool show. Not my typical, or not what I really expected. So that's like a nice surprise too, not being just the kind of a typical like hero path in one of those kinds of shows. So that rounds out my flavor of the week for this week.
Nice. Well, I'm happy you're pleasantly surprised. I'll tell you, I was pleasantly surprised. I know I teased you a little bit where the end of the Fast and Furious saga was coming up, the end of the little box set that we had. We finished it up. We watched F9, the one with John Cena in it. And I have a feeling if there are more, we'll see more John Cena. I found out, here's the reason why it's called the Fast Saga, is because they go back and they basically like tinker and tweak and basically kind of like rewrite the history through the movies.
Through like the new ones?
No, like they go all the way back to the beginning. It opens up with a scene with like Dominic Toretto like and his dad, and then there's a moment where the camera cuts over and he's like, and my brother was there too. And like Dominic Toretto has like a brother, like a blood brother, a family blood brother, and it is John Cena.
And he's not at the family cookouts? What the hell is wrong with this man?
I know.
They all end with a goddamn cookout, and he's like, family, except my fucking brother. Apparently.
Well, I'll tell you, they do end up as brothers in the end. They are able to commiserate their differences. But yeah, it is a wacky, wild time. They revive some people that like we thought they were dead, and then they just do.
I know one who was not.
Could be that one. Could be another one. Who knows? But what's really weird is they like. Man, it feels like they hate their audience when they do this because it's so. Because they don't even give you any explanation. They literally describe it as a magic trick and show it as a magic trick and are just like, well, that's it now. And then they just move right on. And it's like, yo, come on. Like they hate us. They think we're the dumbest people ever. Because they do shit like that. And, whatever.
I hate magic tricks because it irritates me not knowing how they did it.
Well, you would love this movie then, because it's just a bunch of magic tricks.
I would be fuming probably the entire time because it's always impressive, and that's why I want to know, because I want to know how I got tricked. Because clearly I'm looking at it, I'm like, you tricked me somehow. I want to know how. Like, I'm just curious.
Sure.
Like, I know it's not because I'm, like, necessarily an idiot. I'm sure sometimes. But usually it's because they're good at what they do. So.
And you just want to, like, see how it all works. So I totally understand that.
I need the curtain peeled back.
Sure. I need the layers peeled back like an onion. So like, if you've seen the rest, go for it. But I honestly have to say, like, just as a standalone, I wouldn't recommend this one.
Oh,
It's
I've
it's
seen a
like
bunch of them. I'll probably do it.
go for it, you know. And then my food here for the week has been Mrs. T's pierogies. It was a mainstay, like a mainstay of my Justin. You're gonna be home alone tonight. Figure it out. Like that's what I would do. I would just like do pierogies, Mrs. T's, cook them up, you know, in my own specific way.
How do you cook them?
And
You can't just
you know,
say, what do
I
you
make
throw in
them.
there?
I make them. I heat them up. I make sure they're warm when I eat them.
Okay.
But it's it's just a nice thing to have on hand. Like if I know like Sarah's working late or whatever it's gonna be, it's just something nice. I can just like fry up in the pan and cook for myself. That's how I do it. I just fry it up in the pan
Okay.
with like some cooking oil. I do some garlic salt on them. I do a little bit of
Yeah.
pepper.
That's a good
Yeah.
answer. That's
Oh yeah,
all.
it's great.
I
No, I just love being like defensive when probing answers comes in.
Oh,
It's
I'm
just
such
funny.
I'm such a fiend with my pierogies because like being Polish, my grandmom used to make them a bunch,
Gotcha.
and so I
Gotcha.
love like some yellow onion fried up in there with some butter.
Sure.
Throw a little. I like that red pepper kick, so throwing that in.
Yep.
I'm a big. I love my
I've seen them done
pierogies,
up like
so,
that.
Yeah, I
So,
like
but
to.
that's like without the crispy outside. That has more of like a pasta type consistency.
You can, or you can
Mm-hmm.
like steam them and then like throw them in a pan to give them like that. So you
Right.
get that like soft inside, but you get that nice crisp outside. Yeah,
For sure.
I love a good pierogi,
Pierogies.
man. That's a great
I'm
one.
a big fan. And then my music here for the week, going back to recent release, just wanted to kind of see how it aged, see how I feel when I come back to it. Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, Kendrick Lamar's most recent release.
Nice.
I gotta say, it slapped as hard as it did when it first came out. I enjoyed it just as much, if not more. I have to say, I did skip "We Cry Together." The
fair.
arguing back and forth
Yeah,
on release. I feel like I had listened to it enough, and I was just like, I get it, I understand that. I did skip on this playthrough.
that's fair.
So you can't really say no skippables for this one, but I think as a 4 months out listen, I was super pleased and figured, yeah, Kung Fu Kenny still knows how to write an album. This is great.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's cool because I mean, and that's the other part about it. If you want to listen to an album as a whole, like you'll listen to that. If you're listening for replayability, like yeah, most of those songs you can, but they're I mean that's a tough one for me too because it's just such a long like prelude with them back and forth and all. And as I've said with my music, it's a lot about vibes for me.
Yeah.
So like, I love cohesive albums because it does give the consistent vibe throughout. But like, yeah, there are some songs that I'll hit that skip through as well.
Yeah. Sometimes you're just having a great day and you're like, no reason to put a rain cloud over this.
Why bring me down? So
Right.
but solid. I love to hear it. That's one that I'll have to go back to. I haven't done a replay like that, and if you're right, and that's only 4 months old, then that's wild.
That was just a guess, but it doesn't feel that far away. It's probably closer to 7 or 8 realistically.
But either way, like it does. It's crazy thinking that it's still that recent. It feels like it should be a little further, but that's pretty wild. But that does round out the flavor of the week for this week's episode.
Yes, it does.
So it does bring us to the end of the episode, as always for the week. But always, check us out on Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube if you want to see our smiling faces. But we really appreciate everyone taking the time to spend with us week after week. And looking forward to the upcoming episodes with some race companions, hopefully in the near future, and some recaps of the upcoming F1 races and all for you. But yeah, thank you all for being with us week after week.
Just tell your friends. New episodes every Thursday. We really appreciate you listening. We really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. And as always, there's been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.